This is Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. On the show, you'll hear from innovators in the food space. We'll have disruptive conversations with people from around the globe who are taking the lead on topics like food sustainability, ending world hunger, food security, and so much more. I'm your host, Paul Newnham. In this episode, we're talking to Renato Godhinho. Renato is a special advisor for international affairs at MDS in Brazil and the co-chair of the G20 task force for the establishment of a global alliance against hunger and poverty. In today's conversation, we talk about the role of the G20 task force. You'll hear Renato tell the story of how he became involved in public service, the challenges facing the G20 task force, and Renato shares what he sees when he looks into the future. Let's get into it. Renato, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you with us. So let's start by getting to know you a bit. How did you come to work in public service?
That was too long ago for me to really account for. I became a diplomat in 2003. So that was coincidentally the first term of Lula's government. And it was really for the willingness of being able to witness the transformations in the world from a good position. So I think that was my drive at the time.
And before going into public service, you were a journalist?
Yeah, I was a journalist. I worked in scientific journalism, general news for a while, but not for too long before I just entered into public service.
Have you reflected a little bit on how your background as a journalist gave you a bit of an advantage to understand some of the problems the world faces today?
Actually, I do. So journalists are supposed to go out and understand the world and break it down to be able to explain it simply. Journalists are not really supposed to know anything in depth, but try to quickly adapt and know different things every time, and be really the witnesses of reality, of our reality of society, and those that are accounting from it, providing their accounts. So I think it really does help with these dynamics, and being able to better communicate is also an asset in our profession.
Absolutely. I mean, communication is key, but also being able to understand and see and then work out where you go from there. So at the moment, you're the co-chair of the G20 task force for the establishment of a global alliance against hunger and poverty. So for anyone who doesn't know, what is this?
The task force was something unique established by President Lula at the beginning of the Brazilian presidency of the G20. I won't go into the whole G20 dynamics, but it has standing working groups that are very traditional. And a task force is somewhat different because it was created for a single purpose, and it's not supposed to continue on in the other G20 presidency. So it had a specific goal, delivery to make, and once it's done, it's to be disbanded.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about what the task force role is. Like, what's it bringing in? What's this global alliance?
Yeah, so the task force was charged with this mandate of establishment of a global alliance against hunger and poverty. And we had from the start the idea of filling a governance gap in hunger and poverty, actually more than one, but I think the main goal of what was to be or is to be the Global Alliance is to keep the political visibility and the need for fighting hunger and poverty very high in the political agenda, even in the midst of all these multiple crises that the world is going on and that sometimes have distracted us from the basics. And if we don't tackle the basics, challenges that are not small, but there should be easier to defeat hunger and poverty than to solve climate change or to build lasting world peace. It should be easier, but if you don't do that, what is the hope that we have to handle the other challenges? So that's first. And the second is to fill this other gap where the world now has plenty international frameworks and strategies on food security and nutrition, on ending poverty. We have our SDG goals, 1 and 2. And we also have on the other side of the scale small projects that are sometimes very beautifully designed in countries, but they don't reach the scale because many governments that should be leading this push, that are the only kinds of actors that can bring initiatives from the scales of 100 to millions of people. They don't have, many of them at least, don't have the capacities to implement and design and carry out these policies. So, bridging these strategies to the national big program scale, that is the role of the alliance.
And why is it important for Brazil to be at the forefront of this G20 response to the global food and malnutrition crisis and the fight to end poverty? Help me understand why Brazil's leading on this.
There are many factors to that. So, President Lula, from his first mandate, he had a personal history with hunger and poverty that he has overcome. So, he's completely sensitized to the problem and knows that nothing can be more priority than this. And he set Brazil on the course to defeat hunger. And Brazil was off the UN hunger map in 2014 and is led, unfortunately, back again after other governments stopped with the proper policy and program implementation that was able to, jointly with a series of programs that are targeted at the most hungry and the vulnerable, it was able to accomplish this. So those programs were reduced or diminished or distorted, and the effects, even if social expenditures went up, but hunger and poverty also went up. And now, just a year and a half in the third term of President Lula coming back, we've seen the progress that was highlighted in the SOFI report regarding Brazil, very quick progress. So we had, from our experience, this confidence that when we have a range of programs that are nationally led, they have scale, they have the proper budget, they are inserted into national laws and strategies, they're lasting, they can really make an impact, and it's not so complicated. So, with this in mind and seeing how the world is failing to meet SDGs 1 and 2, is off track, especially after the pandemic, and we haven't gone back, we thought that this experience and this approach, which is not unique to Brazil, there are other countries doing that and more over the past decade or and a half, not claiming that Brazil is unique, but many countries still lack this approach and are a bit lost among the strategies that never get implemented and the small projects that proliferate, but they don't add up to something that can really change the reality. So we thought that the G20 presidency was this very unique opportunity that comes once, by definition, once every 20 years, to set up the world agenda around this.
And you were talking just briefly about some of the success in Brazil, some of the policies and the way that they've been funded and aligned. Give people a little bit more of an idea of what are some of those policies that have been very successful or critical in Brazil.
The most well-known policy is the Bolsa Familia cash transfers program, which is tied to, some people say conditionality, some say extra support to health and education outcomes. So giving targeted incomes to families based on a single registry that is informed and built live. No, it's not a national survey that happens every year. So it's a live database of the families, so we can know their vulnerabilities, their specificities, how many people are in the family, is it a woman that's leading the family, single. So that registry enables not only the cash transfers, but a series of other programs that provide subsidized access to energy, to housing, credit. So there's a large diversity of these programs on school feeding, for instance, and in ways in which those programs can be combined. Food procurement to be funneled to these government programs, such as school feeding, to public hospitals, being sourced from family farmers. So at the same time, you promote the local economy, you promote smallholder farmers, better nutrition, better diversity, while also helping to solve hunger and poverty.
And so how the alliance, the intent is the way that it will operate. Talk to us a little bit about just how will it operate? What's the structure? What do we hope to see from it?
This was exhaustively negotiated during the task force, and I think the original approach proposed by Brazil was very well received, and with adjustments here and there, was at the end fully endorsed by the G20 in a ministerial meeting in July. So the proposal and the approach of the Global Alliance is for it to avoid being another multilateral forum. So we're here today in Rome at the sides of the Committee on World Food Security. It is really the most inclusive and legitimate multilateral forum to discuss policy convergence. There has been a good guidelines approved by all countries on how to reduce inequality. So many guidelines and recommendations have come out of this forum. There are other forums that deal with specifics where countries can learn together in a group setting. So the alliance avoids reduplicating these efforts. It is really specific to drive action to the national level. So there are three pillars to the alliance, as they are called. The national pillar, which is the governments putting their political will to drive those programs, to implement them, or to and increase the scale of programs that they might have already in place, the scale, the quality, the delivery. So they politically commit to them, and then they have access to the financial support pillars, which are a number of financial sources from ODA, grants, multilateral development banks, bilateral donors, philanthropies that could also join this alliance and pledge to support the countries that are putting their own political commitments. And finally, the knowledge pillar, which are also the countries, knowledge institutions, academia, think tanks, international organizations that have the know-how on how to implement the nuts and bolts of these policies that could also be leveraged in specific partnerships that will vary for each country. So it's not a group learning setting, it is individual, customized, tailored partnership building for the countries themselves. So the alliance will not be an organization with the means to do the implementation of these policies or even to do the capacity building itself, but it is there to be a matchmaking mechanism to bring finance, knowledge, and the political will from countries together.
So when you think about what steps are going to be critical to seeing success of the Global Alliance going forward?
Well, the challenge, as you saw from the previous explanation, lies in the workings of the three pillars. So each of them is a challenge in sorts. So we now, as you know better than I do, we live in an environment that has huge financial constraints, especially on the poorest countries, some of them that are highly indebted and have difficulties in finding their domestic budgets and building the capacity to implement these programs. Sometimes ODA is too fragmented. That was also a major conclusion from the reports that we got. And diminishing, really, and sometimes being diverted to things that are not useful for the fight against hunger and poverty. So there has been a drive in the G20, and there is a need to be a continued drive from all parties, from civil society networks, from the advocacy networks in support so that the alliance can do its job better, no? Because it's a matchmaking partnership. There has been good work from the Brazilian presidency to bring this political will together from all parties that are joining the alliance. They provide some statements of commitment, which are non-legally binding document, but at least provide some political goodwill that can be leveraged. But it will only be as successful as the members are prepared, to the extent they are prepared to deliver on what they are committing to.
And how do people join the alliance?
The alliance under those three pillars, those that are entitled to join are first the national governments, the financial organizations that provide this financial support, and the knowledge organizations as well, providing different kinds of knowledge. And this includes public and private entities. The way they can join is by submitting and endorsing a document that was approved by the G20 called a Statement of Commitment. This is the entry door to the alliance, and it can be customized for each entity. So if you are a country government, you would join through the national pillar committing to implement the policies. You can be generic or you can specify already at the outset. Those statements of commitment can be further updated after joining. If you are a financial institution, you certainly would join through the financial pillar bit of those statements of commitment. One entity can join through all three like, for instance, the European Commission is looking into doing, because now the European Commission, and aside, has for the first time strategy on eliminating poverty itself within its border. So it means that they also have something to present in their national pillar as a commitment. And of course, providing support to others through finance and through knowledge.
Given all the work that's gone into creating the Global Alliance and the massive challenges which we've talked about that the Alliance is tackling, what motivates you to keep going?
Wow. I think there's no other way. No, we have to do the best we can. We have to try to motivate other people. I think what gives me heart at this point is that all the reception that we've got from many sides, from international organizations, from the countries, from people who have been in the field really working on this for years, is that such a mechanism was needed. And this at first made us more confident that even if the challenges are great, so if it didn't exist, it would have to be invented. So we have to do the best we can.
Absolutely. So if you were to look 10 to 20 years into the future from today or from the day the Global Alliance is launched, what do you see?
Well, the Global Alliance first is projected to last until 2030. So it has 6 years to go, and that's the horizon of delivering on SDGs 1 and 2. I don't know if it will fully help, and of course there are many other factors. It is just one more mechanism to help bring SDGs 1 and 2 back on track. There is no pretension of it being the big single game changer. But if it can help with at least driving the concept that these national policies, when well implemented, when well resourced, when well thought out based on evidence, that's the way to go, and reduce the fragmentation, we can snowball it on. No? So I think I can finish with a little story that Minister Wellington Dias, my boss, that is a leader driving this effort along with other ministries in Brazil and President Lula vision. He likes to tell the story that there is a boy by the beach, and suddenly a big wave comes and crashes by the beach, and with it comes a lot of fish. And the fish are there scattered on the sand, struggling and not able to go back to the sea. And the little boy comes and picks the fish one by one, but there are hundreds of those fish, maybe thousands, and he starts to put them back into the waves. And then another guy, an adult, comes by and say, "What are you doing?" So trying to get back those fish into the water. I'm saving the fish. And he throws another one to the water. "But this is crazy. You will never be able to save all these fish. You are just a boy alone." And the boy just picks another fish and throws it there. "See, I just saved this one. If you help me, maybe we can save double."
Yeah, so important. And I think this motivation and this personal commitment to get involved and do something, I think sometimes with these big challenges, we get stuck. And I think we have to start with saving one and then the next and getting others to join us in some sort of way. And I think that's really critical. So one thing we like to close with a recurring question that we can all relate to. And we often talk a little bit about food. And so I'd love to hear, what's one thing that you love to eat? And being Brazilian, I'm guessing food is very important.
I like a Brazilian. I do love a Brazilian dish, which is actually a side that I'm always amazed how it never pleases many foreigners that go to Brazil and taste it. That I find amazing, because how can one not like farofa, which is really manioc flour that you can fry it, the flour itself. There are many variations with eggs, or with bacon, with onions, on butter, or on olive oil, and with eggs or not. So there are many variations there, but they are all just great. I think the others find it's too dry of a dish. It's not the main dish ever, so it's usually a side with meat or for barbecues, and I really like it.
That's great. Well, all the best as you go towards the launch of the Alliance, and thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. Future Fork is produced by Disruptive Consulting Solutions and supports the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. For more info, head to the website futureforkpodcast.com. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. So you don't miss an episode of Future Fork, make sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Paul Newnham, and I'll see you in the next episode.